And welcome to Rob Schmitt tonight. Globalist elite think tank, the World Economic Forum, kicked off its annual Davos meeting in Switzerland today, hoping to save the world from crises like climate change and food shortages, they claim. Their method, though, requires dramatically altering your life without, of course, inhibiting the extravagance of their own personal lives. The WEF wants to sell us peons the dream of minimalism. You'll own nothing and you'll love it, they say. Ride share rather than owning a car. Live in a shoebox apartment with a minimal carbon footprint while working for a worldwide government or globalist-aligned corporation. Enjoy the stress-free life of being a mouse on a wheel with the knowledge that you're saving the planet and making it more equitable by living your life on a much smaller scale. It's watered-down Marxism, of course, being pushed by the world's biggest capitalist pigs, and every year this event receives nothing but glowing coverage from the mainstream media because, of course, all of their bosses are in attendance. Also in attendance, a who's who of American swamp creatures. Check out this priceless photo. Fox News board member Paul Ryan, Arizona Democrat Kyrsten Sinema, and Anthony Scaramucci all hanging out. The head of our FBI, Chris Wray, was also in attendance. Brian Stelter was invited, resurfacing to hold a disinformation panel at the WEF. Just so much credibility. And ketchup mistress John Kerry, our favorite, is now a premier guest of the WEF. Today he gloated about how nice his hotel room is, no doubt an expansive suite in frigid Davos, heated to perfection by fossil fuels. We assume John Kerry flew in private, burning hundreds of gallons of jet fuel so that he can lecture the world on climate change. Kerry gloated about how heroic his mission to save the world is today, and then began dabbling in the typical collectivist propaganda, which he masks as an environmental agenda. Take a listen.
It's pretty extraordinary that we, select group of human beings, are able to sit in a room and come together and actually talk about saving the planet. I mean, it's so almost extraterrestrial. Really, that's where we are. You look at what's happening with species. Half the species of the planet have been already killed. And if you look at the way we live, the incredible sort of destructive process of growth, the way we interpret it, not as enlightened growth, but as in sort of robber baron growth.
Not enlightened growth, but robber baron growth. Nice little dog whistle to his fellow socialists there. Vilifying capitalism to an audience of uber wealthy capitalists. What a bizarre event this is every year. It's very strange when you try to figure out what exactly this thing is. The WEF, though, is actually the picture of how socialism will come to America. The Democrat Party wrangling the private sector finally completely into its corner using climate change. That is the plan. The political elites and would-be oligarchs who run our largest corporations and tech companies meeting to discuss the endless possibilities for America and the West. We could be carbon neutral and completely equitable if only our people were more highly taxed and dramatically less free. A utopia where feckless politicians like John Kerry have dramatically more power and much more of our money to save the world.
So how do we get there? Well, the lesson I've learned in the last years, and I learned it as secretary and I've learned it since, reinforced in spades, is money, 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 money.
Kerry also said today the President's State of the Union speech in 3 weeks will highlight the need to speed up the process of going carbon neutral, cutting any and all red tape, destroying any regulation, which is something Democrats never do, but of course they'll do it here because, according to John Kerry, we don't have any time to think about this. We must fundamentally change society right now because, as they say, the science is settled, and they don't want us looking into the science anymore. Except maybe we should. Last week we reported on the UN's new study indicating the ozone layer is actually repairing itself, a story that got barely any coverage at all. Now expected to be fully repaired in the next 30 to 40 years. The ozone layer is just going to repair itself. A graph from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration showing global temperatures trending down in the past 7 years. Climate change manics claim that when you widen that out to the last 100 years, you do notice the Earth has gotten warmer, although not on a large scale, a point or two. And that is true. And also, that's all the authoritarians in Davos want you to see, want you to think about. But they want you to ignore the fact that perhaps 50 years of work to reduce emissions and make fossil fuels cleaner, eliminating things like chlorofluorocarbons, along with the fact that we live on an evolving planet, which is capable of repairing itself, well, all of that may already have solved most of the problem that the Bonn-Villain Convention wants to convince you to give up your freedom and quality of life to fix. They don't want you to think about that, though. How horribly inconvenient that would be for these power-hungry maniacs that we're listening to. What if we don't need to do much more? That's a huge problem for John Kerry. Even Elon Musk commenting on the recent trend downward in temperature in the past several years. A man so entrenched in climate change, he became the world's richest person by fighting it, tweeting out, "Easier to argue that global warming is a risk rather than a certainty." But then saying it is foolish to roll those dice, given that we will eventually run out of fossil fuels and have to generate energy sustainably anyway. So that's the biggest climate hero on the planet, saying that the real reason we need to go climate neutral, I guess, is because we're going to run out of fossil fuels, not because the climate's going to be destroyed. That's a big admission. Musk also slamming the WEF today after Klaus Schwab, who you saw right there in his speech, on how the WEF can master the future, which is what Schwab said today. Musk tweeting out, "Master the future" doesn't sound ominous at all. How is WEF Davos even a thing? Are they trying to be the boss of the earth? So even the world's most famous climate change fighter gets it. Gets what the real agenda is here. It's a power play using climate change to scare you into submission. And it's working. Years of political pressure from groups like the WEF have forced the very gullible and very liberal German government into a major energy debacle. In recent years, the Germans began shutting down carbon-neutral nuclear plants after becoming reliant on Russian natural gas, which is the new way Western countries can pretend to be green, of course, pulling energy from somewhere else so you don't have to see it being made. But the Ukraine war has been a sobering moment for the Germans and a lot of Europe, and the Germans learned the hard way why climate virtue signaling is so dangerous. The government, in an admission of their need for fossil fuels again, allowing a German energy company to destroy a village so it can mine the coal that sits beneath it. Again, these are people that got rid of their nuclear power plants. Greta Thunberg joined a protest today at that village in what almost seemed like a staged photo shoot that we see here. She was seen smiling and laughing before being carried away by German police in this protest. Climate zealots who adhere to every word of think tanks like the WEF have brought the West to the brink of energy suicide and dramatically emboldened Russia, a nation that they claim to hate. There's so much chaos in the logic of all of this. None of it makes any sense, and the time to wake up from all of this nonsense is now. Former Brexit Party leader Nigel Farage joins us now. Sir, good to have you back. You were at the helm of Brexit, a group that was fundamentally opposed to the agenda of the WEF. How scary is it watching this think tank convene every year and get nothing but glowing praise from the Western media?
Yes, it's this sort of unholy alliance, isn't it, of big government, big business, big banks, with big media virtually in their pockets. And it's all about virtue signaling. It's all about telling the world how wonderful you are. And yet the truth of it, of course, is that Davos is the annual hypocrites jamboree. Over 1,000 private jets flying in to Davos. That's just for starters. And as you say, anti-capitalist rhetoric, yet the biggest capitalists, or should we actually say corporatists, are on the planet are there. But here's the thing, for all the talk of John Kerry and others, and yet we can question the science, but the real debate here isn't the science. The real debate is what we in the Western world are doing in the name of science, namely subsidizing renewable energies by making the bills that are, ordinary families, small businesses have to pay for electricity unnecessarily high, making us uncompetitive. And I can tell you, in this country, we have reduced carbon emissions more than any other country in the Western world. Right. And Boris Johnson and others can say, aren't we marvellous? Do you know how we've done it? We've done it by deindustrializing. We've done it by our steel industry moving off to India, to China, to other countries. countries.
Right.
We've done it, but we've done it by importing coal, gas, oil, and that's how we've done it. Net, the effect on the total planet is absolutely zero. And here's one fact that the other side can't deal with. You ask a John Kerry, you ask somebody who's for the WEF agenda on global warming and combating it, you ask them, how much coal is going to be burnt in the world in 2023? And they look at you blankly. They don't know. I'll give you the answer. It's 8 billion tons. Yes, 8 billion tons. Mankind burned more coal in 2023 than in any year in our history. And I'm talking about Indonesia with 250 coal-fired power stations. China, who are building 80 new giant coal-fired power stations every single year. So even if you bought into the science that we're all going to fry to a crisp in the next 10 years unless we act, frankly, what we do, unless China, Indonesia, and India do something,
makes no difference.
It's irrelevant.
And that's the funniest part of all of this is how they fool people into not seeing something that is so obvious. They fool people into thinking that the Paris Climate Accord was so critical. It incentivized China to pollute more until 2030, and the most ridiculous part of it. And you see how ridiculous this all is. John Kerry talked about the importance of using leverage today to get corporations aligned with their goals, something that they've been very successful in doing thus far. The fact that our massive governments are teaming up with our largest corporations, I feel like in the future you could see the West looking more authoritarian in nature, kind of like more like a China or a Russia, a uniparty at the helm with an oligarchy under its thumb, and everybody kind of nodding in agreement, and the people are the ones that lose out.
Yeah, this is not capitalism, all right?
No.
This is global corporatism. And I spent 21 years inside the European Union, which, if you like, is the model, the WEF. It's the model for the world. It's what Hillary Clinton, had she become president, would have tied America much more closely to. So I've seen how this works. And it benefits the giant globalist corporate companies to go along with this rubbish, to go along with so-called ESG investing, because what they're doing is creating an atmosphere in which small and medium-sized businesses cannot enter the marketplace and compete with them. So you get less consumer choice, you get worse prices for people, you get higher inflation. None of this, in economic terms, works for anybody but those in the room at Davos.
It is so corrupt. The nature of it all is so corrupt, and you got to wake people up to these things because, again,